Hey everyone, happy 2025. Today's story takes us to Puerto Rico, which for 7 months now has been taken over and controlled, both economically and politically, by giant pet-eating snakes. But their new masters aside, this story took place in a small, beautiful southwestern municipality called Cabo Rojo, where a local bar called the Bar Marea, which is sort of like an outdoor area for customers here, and then a small part of the building with a service window for the staff to kind of serve people out of. So the Bar Marea was recently, and quite dramatically I might add, burned to the ground. And it wasn't just Bar Marea that was burned to the ground here, because the building that Bar Marea was attached to and part of is also a building that hosted the Artesanías Wavilla, as well as the Marinera restaurant. And the enormous fire that consumed the Bar Marea that fateful evening would inadvertently claim them as well. And in fact, it would even damage a fourth attached business, Luigi's Seaside Hotel, which according to the building owner, whose name is Angel Luis Marrero, had about 50 guests on site while this fire was raging. Now, thankfully, the damage was all inanimate, and nobody was actually hurt in this fire, but what could have caused such a thing? Did somebody leave the stove on? A stray cigarette, perhaps? Well, actually, most people have come to suspect that it was arson, based on video footage that was released by the Bar Marea on Instagram, showing what is clearly a person walking up to the building and setting ablaze. And they also happen to believe that the arsonist is a woman from Missouri. And I should stress here, no one has yet been convicted of anything, and these are simply allegations that the internet is making, and also the police, based on the evidence we have available. So of course, it may turn out not to be her, and this was all just an absolutely crazy string of coincidences and incredible timing and astounding cases of wrong place, wrong time, all that stuff, but most people doubt it, and here's why. A tourist named Danielle Bertozzi, and I gotta tell you, when I was going through everyone's reporting on this stuff, absolutely no one could get this woman's name right.
Has been identified. Her name is Danielle Bertoli.
Her name allegedly is Danielle Berthoni.
Her name is Danielle Rene Bertotti.
By the name of Danielle Berthotti.
Anyway, Darnell Berthotti was a tourist from Missouri who was staying at a nearby Airbnb, nearby relative to the Bar Marea, right, between December 30th and January 11th. So this was a big 2-week New Year's girls' night out extravaganza trip for her, and boy did she party. Danielle was caught on video, several videos in fact, in the wee hours of the morning of January 2nd, being an absolute menace at the Bar Marea.
The cops already
Go home again, we're
and
closed.
guess what? The cops walked me home and they were like, no problem, bitch, you live right there.
Yeah, but
guess
you came
what?
here again looking
You know
for
why?
trouble.
Because he was talking.
So you can kind of see her stumbling around and clapping her hands there, but you know, this isn't the craziest thing we've ever seen really on this clip, but you hear the guy say, "You came back looking for trouble." So she came back a second time this night, and we'll get into all that in just a second. But apparently, after belligerently talking a bunch of shit with the diners and staff at the Bar Marea, she then proceeded to assault one of the waiters, which led to police being called on her the first time. And according to Bar Marea's recount of the events of that evening, which they gave in a lengthy Facebook post on January 2nd, and which appears to be somewhat substantiated by footage they acquired or had, the police were being pretty chummy with Danielle that evening, despite her belligerence. They opted to walk her back to her Airbnb down the street and call it a night. But the police had to be called on Danielle again later that evening / morning when she decided to show back up at the business to continue wreaking havoc. So this wasn't like a silly little argument with the staff one-off thing at this point. This was a protracted and dramatic incident that went on for some time and involved many different people, both staff and patrons, until the bar closed down following her second visit. Danielle was out of control. Well, the police took her home again, and Everybody thought that this was just a stupid thing and it was over. Only, it would appear that Danielle may have had other plans, because this does appear to be someone who looks a lot like her, walking down the street on camera here holding a gas canister. Which is, by the way, a video that was taken shortly after the video of someone, though it's obviously far too blurry to make out any distinct or helpful characteristics here, lighting the whole place up like a crazy beachside bonfire. So what are the odds that the woman who clearly had a vendetta against this bar was just out perusing the neighborhood on entirely unrelated business for which she required a gas canister? Well, actually, funny enough, higher than I initially thought, because as it turns out, Puerto Rico, to add to their troubles with the giant pet-eating snakes, have also been suffering from rolling blackouts. They had one during New Year's Eve, and according to the still anonymous manager of the Airbnb she stayed at during her trip, Bertozzi had been provided with a canister full of gas and a generator for that very reason, which would mean Danielle Bertozzi had access to a gas canister that evening, and it was probably full of gas. So we know, because of the Airbnb manager, that she has easy access to a gas canister. We see a person who looks suspiciously in build and stature like Danielle holding a gas canister walking away from the fire that was clearly started by a human. And then Danielle flees Puerto Rico that same day, even though the manager of her Airbnb says that she had that place booked out until the 11th. Instead, she boarded a flight through Tampa and back to Missouri in what looks suspiciously, allegedly, like fleeing. And there was quite a bit of uproar about this, because the evidence did seem to be heavily stacking against her, and yet it seemed like the US officials weren't taking this seriously at all. It catalyzed a lot of debates about economic and social issues in Puerto Rico, including people from the states going to Puerto Rico and taking advantage of the island, and how tourists from the states seem to get away with things that they wouldn't normally. And the public outcry perhaps prompted some early action from Missouri alderwoman and Puerto Rican Daniela Velasquez. But don't worry, they butchered her name too.
This one's from Daniela Vasquez, part of the board of aldermen.
Dude, you're pointing to the name. Daniela Velasquez decided to write a strongly worded letter to the company that was discovered to be Danielle Bertozzi's employer, a company called HLK Agency, which is a digital marketing and advertising agency, asking for her to be held accountable in some way, as Daniela believed the police were failing. A sentiment reflective of what many Puerto Ricans were saying online at the time. And the company, no doubt facing quite a bit of public pressure after it was discovered that she worked for them, responded promptly. "We are shocked," they say, to learn about the event in Puerto Rico earlier this afternoon. "We have not yet been contacted by law enforcement in either Puerto Rico or Missouri, but we are ready to cooperate in their investigation if asked. After learning about this, we chose to place Miss Bertozzi on suspension immediately, pending further information. We are outraged by this senseless act and hope the authorities can address it in a timely fashion." Alleged business burner and definite sloppy Karen Danielle Bertozzi was fired from her job. And up until very recently, that was where the story stopped. But at about 10 p.m. on January 8th, I stumbled upon a brand new video, one taken by the next door neighbor of Danielle Bertozzi. And you're gonna love this.
So this is Danielle Bertozzi's house. I did not know that this had even happened until we saw ATF pull up this morning. They have a drug sniffing dog. I don't know why, but the good dog is going back to the car, and she is in this car right now with a couple agents, and they're taking her away.
Let's hope so. I coincidentally checked.
She's getting in the police car.
So, yeah. He said he's thinking into that and he's going to try to check it out today. No.
Danielle Bertothy, at least according to this woman who claims to be her next-door neighbor, has now been arrested at her home, thrown into the back of an ATF vehicle, and by the way, that checks out because we learned recently that ATF had taken over this case, and then she was hauled away. We're still awaiting charges, and should she turn out to be as guilty under more scrutiny as she appears to many to be right now, this will be a very fun series of updates to do. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. Please feel free to leave me recommendations for future videos in the comments below, and I'll see you around.